Hey church, it's Eric here, and for this week's midweek moment, I want to continue with what we were talking about last week. And so last week, we talked about studying the Bible because it's living and it's active, but sometimes just with life, we get off sometimes, it falls by the wayside, and we realize that maybe, you've gone weeks or months or even years maybe without, really reading the book. Maybe every so often you open it up and read a passage. Maybe just open it up, put your finger down and go with whatever verse you land on. But if this book really is what we believe it to be, right, inspired by God, and that it guides us in life today to have that relationship with Him, to understand Him more, to understand God more, and to understand, therefore, who we are, then we really need to understand this book. And so last week, I challenged you to read the book of Philemon from the New Testament, just one chapter, right? It's just a small book, one chapter long. And I challenged you to read that on Saturday and Sunday. And then I also asked you to do a little bit of research on the side. And so I gave you some of those resources. But I asked you to find out who the author is, the audience, and the purpose, right? So author, audience, and purpose. Because when we come to any book in the Bible, we want to understand the context in which it was written, right? It wasn't written for you and me to read, 2,000-3,000 years later. It was written to a specific audience at a point in time in which they needed to hear it. And so, Philemon is the audience. He's the recipient of this. Paul is the author. And the purpose, right? What's the purpose? Well, if you read Philemon like you should have, you know that Philemon had a slave. His name was Onesimus. And Onesimus, for whatever reason, he ran away. And in that culture, of course, it was different than slavery in the United States. You could be in debt to someone, and so therefore become saved. There are different reasons. And we don't quite know the reason or the context which led to Onesimus' slavery, but we do know that he ran away, right? Which would have cost Philemon money, and because slaves were entrusted with quite a bit. And so Onesimus runs away, and while he's running away, he runs into Paul, and he meets Paul, and he becomes a believer, he becomes a Christian. And so Paul sees Onesimus, and he knows the value that he could have by having Onesimus help him, but he also realizes that Onesimus has to make things right? And so Paul writes a letter to Philemon, and the whole purpose of the letter is really to say to Philemon, hey, you know what? You're a believer. Onesimus is a believer. Like, we need you to show grace, which is kind of cool because that's what our church is all about, right? Showing grace. But he says to Philemon, I need you, I implore you to show grace to Onesimus. Yes, he ran away. Yes, he did something, he wronged you, but I need you to show him grace. And I need you to forgive him. Right? And so this book, when we study a book of the Bible, then we take, what we read in that chapter, what happened, then we say, all right, so what's the truth behind that? What can we apply? Because we don't have, slaves today, but you do have people in your life that have wronged you. And you do have people that maybe it was this last month, maybe it was, years ago, where they hurt you, they wronged you, they did something that, had repercussions. And so maybe for you, right, the truth is that you've been hanging on to that. You've been hanging on to that anger, that frustration with them. And maybe it's time to let that go. And maybe it's time to give them grace. Right? So who do you have in your life that, if I say who's that person, you instantly think of them, right? Because they're lodged even in your heart. Yeah, you have maybe a heart of anger towards them, maybe a heart of pain, whatever it is, but you know who that is. And maybe it's time to show them grace, right? As a secondary purpose, maybe you're like Onesimus and you've wronged someone. And so maybe, just like he had to take responsibility and go to Philemon, maybe it's time for you to do that as well. And to go to that person that you wronged and say, you know what, I am sorry, I take responsibility, whatever it is, but maybe it's time for you to make things right. Okay? And so as we start reading the Bible, there are different truths that will come out of it. And so maybe the Spirit brings to mind that person who has wronged you, or maybe he brings to mind that person that you have wronged, right? The Spirit of God will work through the words of the Bible as God leads us into a deeper understanding of who he is and how he wants us to follow him today. And so, if you haven't read Philemon, or if you already have, just go back through it, read it again, right? And those are just some broad strokes of the purpose and the secondary purpose behind the book of Philemon. And you can go deeper into it, but when it comes down to it, we start understanding who our God is, and we start understanding why he created us and what he's calling us to do as we engage with this book. All right, so I would encourage you to continue to read the books of the Bible. You can continue, going to the New Testament, Old Testament, but it is great. And if you will do it, even just a little bit every day, right, you will be uplifted, you will have more hope, more peace in life, because you are coming to the Creator who gives us hope and who gives us peace. All right, so it's kind of a little bit of a long midweek moment, but it is so worth it, because the Bible, right, is living and active, and it's inspired by God. All right, I will see you on Sunday at our Easter celebration. So have a great rest of your week, and see you then.